Today I'd like to answer the question, or at least respond to it. Why are we reading this book in our Introduction to Theological Studies class, this book, A New Introduction to Theology? You have already been introduced to an approach to doing theology that emphasizes drawing upon scholarship, piety, and justice. Although those particular words are distinctively joined in the Memphis Theological Seminary mission statement, they point to or create a kind of checklist for doing good practical theology that transcends the seminary. That is, it gives you a checklist for doing practical theology that will sustain you in your work of ministry well beyond your days of being at Memphis Theological Seminary. The essay that you read about practical theology in relation to scholarship, piety, and justice connected to key elements in practical theology. You might recall the C/attend to was connected with scholarship. Judge and discern was connected with piety, and act was connected with justice. In turn, practical theology has been described as informing what's called the pastoral imagination, which Dijkstra described in his essay that you read earlier. A pastoral imagination that draws upon intellectual curiosity, that is scholarship, a lively faith, piety, and a commitment to the well-being of others, justice. So far, what we have read and responded to has pointed to the work of theology and suggested a method, practical theology, drawing upon scholarship, piety, and justice, but we have not actually engaged in the work of theology. We've talked around it, we've talked about it, but we haven't been involved with doing theology. Along the way, there have been hints and suggestions that theology is concerned about a better understanding of our lives of faith and a better practice of our lives of faith. And along with those hints and suggestions, certain key words within theology have emerged. Key words such as God, creation, sin, redemption, justification, sanctification. There'll be many more. For example, Dr. Erhard Brown's sermon pointed to the work of the Holy Spirit, which in turn reflects a Trinitarian understanding of God as Father, Son, and Spirit. That's a piece of the Christian theological tradition, which continues to provide rich resources for reflecting upon how God is present in human life and the creation as a whole. But now is the time to enter into a fuller discussion of central theological themes and issues in the Christian life. These themes are the way in which generations of Christians have sought to understand and practice a life of Christian discipleship. The ways in which Christians have wrestled and continue to wrestle with these themes will be on display as we read and respond to the readings from this book, A New Introduction to Theology. So the first reason we are reading this book is to give us an overview of those themes within Christian theology in order to begin to structure our work of doing practical theology. That's a work that those of us in ministry are called to do, not only for ourselves, but also in service to the church and the broader society. As people of Christian faith and as ministers within the Christian faith, we are called to be theologians, to be reflective of and deliberate in our practice of the Christian faith. This book that we're reading points to how this might be done within the Christian faith. But why this particular book among the many possibilities of introductory texts in theology? There's no doubt a certain kind of arbitrariness in making such a choice. There are certainly many other fine introductions to theology that could have been chosen. So I just have to say why I chose this book. I chose this book because of its emphasis upon theology as full embodied thought, as it says right there on page 1. That opens up a way of doing theology that I think connects well with the integration of scholarship, piety, and justice. Simply put, theological scholarship that is integrated with piety and justice is full-bodied theology. Further, the grounding of theology in sensory experience, the senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, along with those categories of loving and resting, also reflects an important Christian conviction that God becomes flesh, becomes incarnate in the life, person, and teaching of Jesus Christ. An incarnational theology is very much a Christian theology, one that takes seriously God's embodiment in Jesus and God's presence in God's creation. Much of the trouble within Christianity today is its failure to be transformative within the broader society, while also appealing to people searching for meaning and purpose in life, is that it spiritualizes and individualizes an incarnate and communal gospel. It relegates the gospel to the next life or to one's interior life and forgets how the gospel is connected to us as social beings, as embodied beings in God's creation. Instead of a gospel intimately intertwined with the pressing realities and challenges of human life, there is this false gospel that stands aside, letting the powers of the world, greed, domination, exploitation, among others, set the agenda for our church life, along with our political, economic, and cultural life. Instead of a gospel that challenges the powers and principalities, there is a gospel that endorses them and cheers them on, and even measures its success by how it conforms to those powers and principalities. This book, in contrast, introduces us to theology in a way that asks us to take seriously our embodied lives. Therefore, it will challenge us. It will raise questions in our theologies and in our lives, and it will ask us to consider our lives in ways we might not have considered before. Now, you don't have to agree with everything in this book, and I certainly don't. But I hope that you will find its way of asking questions and engaging in theological inquiry helpful in stimulating your own theological reflection as informed by scholarship, piety, and justice. And that, finally, is what I hope this book will do. Invite you into the exciting and sometimes exasperating work of Christian theology, a work that is crucial for our lives of Christian discipleship and for the practice of Christian ministry. I hope you'll enjoy this book. I hope you'll find it helpful and enlightening, and I hope you'll engage with it with due seriousness. Thank you.